This could be an ad read. Please send us money so I can read an ad for you. But this is also the franchise. As always, it's Nevin Brown, and I'm joined by
James Double Big Piercy.
Double Big Piercy. You're talking about your testes, the Thunder down under.
That's right. Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, I call them.
Oh man, oh god. I'm just thinking. Someone's made that joke before, like very recently. So, if you've made that joke, we've also made that joke. What's up? Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
Anyway, this is a Houston Rockets basketball podcast, and you should like and subscribe now. And if you want to be sold on it, do that later because we're going to sell hard today. Unfortunately, we're going to kick off this episode not with the fact that the Rockets are on a lovely 4-game winning streak after a 3-game losing streak, but wins are wins. You can only play the Pelicans so many times, or the Suns, or the Magic, a bunch of teams that are falling apart in disorder, dysfunction, but wins are wins. And you got to beat here's the thing. I'll say this. You want to be a playoff team, you got to beat the bad teams.
Absolutely.
That's the way to do it. And I think the Rockets still have a good record against playoff teams and all that stuff. So that's why they have a good record. But unfortunately, one of the reasons they have a good record has been Amen Thompson's development into one of the best perimeter defenders in the league and someone who's basically stolen a starting job. He's coming for our jobs. Amen Thompson's coming for your job, Jabari Smith. And now Tari Easton is. You lost your job, Jabari. That's what happened to you. But Amen sprained his ankle in Ime Udoka's quest to get him his first career triple-double, I believe. James, I want to get your opinion on Udoka having him out there basically in garbage time against the Pelicans to secure that first career triple double. I want to get your opinion on, but I also I know you've heard people probably comment on it, and I'm sure those opinions are also varied.
First of all, third career triple double.
Third career. Wait, then what the fuck was he doing out there?
Well, yeah, I can see why you make that assumption. Yeah.
I mean, I just assumed you're like, that's why you do it.
Yeah. I kind of have mixed feelings about it, right? Like, so obviously, like, he shouldn't have been out there, like gun to my head, yes or no. Yeah. Take him off. Right. Cause this is what can happen. But I can sympathize with the idea of, like, I don't know that Ime is the most player friendly coach in some ways, like he's a hard ass. And sometimes when you're a hard ass, I think you got to kind of throw the kids a bone and, like, let them have some fun, because it's like, he doesn't always find opportunities where he thinks that's appropriate. And I think that maybe he just was like, let's let the kid get a triple double, like, he's young, he'll be fine. Obviously he was not fine. But I understand it, even if though I'm like, in hindsight, it's like, yeah, man, you probably should have taken them off,
Yeah. Have you talked or seen any comments about how bad of a decision this was?
Yeah, I've certainly seen a lot of people very upset about it.
Can you elaborate on some of those things? Because that's what I'm here for.
Well, I would say that, like, generally there are a fair number of Rockets fans that really don't like Ime Udoka, which I find very frustrating. But because I think it's
what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, because the offense is, like, pretty rudimentary, I guess. That's probably the number one criticism, and it's valid. But what I think fans, it's the same thing. We've talked about this so many times, right? Fans just basically only watch their own team, and so then they only weigh their team against their own team, right? It's like, well, we watch all these other teams all year, and we watch the Rockets every time, and most of these teams have a better offense, or a better looking offense at least.
Yeah.
Ergo, Ime Udoka's a bad coach. And it's like, if you watch those teams all the time, you would notice the problems with those teams. Like he's a good coach. He's not a perfect coach. And I agree that the offense needs a little more variety, a little more razzle dazzle, but it's he's a good coach. He's an above average NBA coach.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. Like, I understand, like, I'm frustrated with Ime Udoka on the offensive side, but I say every time he is a good coach. He's an excellent defensive coach, and I think he is overall a very good coach. It's just
It's a vocal minority is what I would call it. Like not, yeah. Most
so
people.
so those people are using Amen Thompson getting hurt as a way to vent about other
Yeah,
other gripes they have, other
yeah.
grievances they have with Ime Udoka. Yeah, fan bases like never change. They're all the same. I can't like here's the thing. I can't believe there are Rockets fans that dislike Ime Udoka after having Steven Silas as their
I know.
coach.
I know.
I remember when Mike D'Antoni was the coach, and he was the best coach ever until they traded for Russell Westbrook, and then he was an idiot for doing micro ball. And I was like,
Which
I
is
don't know.
his only recourse, to be honest. Not to digress too
Yeah.
far, but like
What the fuck was he
he,
supposed to do?
I don't know. I mean, Russ couldn't play with Capella, at least not in D'Antoni's like system,
And that
which
system was
had gotten
tailored.
pretty far.
It also was tailored for James Harden, and you're not going to be like, yeah, like we're just going to change the fucking system completely because we care more about Russell Westbrook being not bad than James Harden being James Harden.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and I mean, I think it was a failure. Not to go all the way into this, right? But
Yeah.
what I wish is that the team, instead of blowing it up, had just aggressively pursued some kind of a stretch big the following summer. Like Capella for Robert Covington made some sense, pretty much roughly equal players, but Covington satisfied the role that we needed better, So that made some sense, but it left us without a big. And the long-term answer, it wasn't like, well, Russ can't play with a big. Russ could have played with like Dwayne Dedman or Marcus Sol, or like there were guys that could have been available that could have extended that run one more year. And then the very next year, the Suns make the finals. I'm not sure if maybe stretch big D'Antoni, Russ, and Harden Rockets might not have made the finals. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's
no.
it.
No, I
Didn't
feel
happen.
you. I feel you. Not to get too bogged down that. But yeah, that's so my opinion on the Amen Thompson injury to get back to the topic. I did steer you adrift. I'm like
Yeah, yeah. But
what I'm like a
then I ran
I'm like
away.
a I'm like a siren, being like, hey, remember the past? Do you want to complain about the past in sports? And you're like,
The pass.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm cool with it. Like, if a player is about to have a triple double and if they're not like, Nikola Jokic or like Russell Westbrook, where it's like you've averaged a triple double, you have a million of
Yeah.
them, LeBron, if you're a young player, it's fun. And I don't see any issue with it because you got to have five guys out there on the court. He's not like he had all
Yeah.
five starters out there. He had one guy, and he was going to pull him as soon as he got a rebound. One of the easiest stats to collect, kind of just like by being out there without putting yourself at risk. And, basketball, you can get injured.
Let
It's
me
like
say
what? Like, would you get mad at him if it was like in the first quarter he sprained his ankle on the
right.
exact same play? Of course you wouldn't. It's just it happens, and you can't. I don't love second guessing decisions where this super minor low probability thing happened and ended up being bad. It's like okay, well, it's just I hate the hindsight 2020. It's this trade was so idiotic because the guy we traded for's body exploded. It's like, oh well,
Yeah.
we didn't know that. We didn't know that was going to happen. So like, what are
Yeah.
we supposed to
Yeah.
do?
No, it's exactly what I was going to say. Like the odds of it happening were pretty low. It just did happen. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Now, I think the more interesting conversation about Amen Thompson's injury is what does that mean for the Rockets? Fortunately, their schedule has been relatively soft compared to what it can be in the Western Conference. and I believe it projects to be they have a game against Dallas tonight. We're recording this March 14th, Friday. And then they have a game against Chicago. Both are at home. Always nice to have back to backs at home. Then they have a game against Philadelphia, who I don't know if you know this. The process is back, baby. The
Yeah.
process is back. They're going for it. They're going for keeping their pick. That's only, is it top five or top? I think it's top six protected.
I guess top six protected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia is going to try to lose that game. Chicago is probably going to try to lose that game. Dallas probably is also trying to lose all the rest of their games. I would have to
Well,
imagine.
so Kyrie's out for the year. I know, and AD I think is like questionable, but generally that probably means he won't play if I had to guess, especially as you said, like they don't have really very much incentive left this year. Like,
Yeah. So those are three games, and then they're at Orlando. But I think by then Amen might be back, so it's
possibility.
probably not. Now the always the concern with ankle injuries is he's had one before. They can kind of reoccur if you come back a little too early. Um, but yeah, so like, what's your feeling about the Rockets without Amen Thompson?
Well, Amen Thompson's my favorite player. That's no secret. I think he's pretty valuable.
Do you have his poster in your room?
I don't have any posters anywhere. Haley always gives me a hard time about that. She's like, "You don't decorate anything." I'm like, yeah, if it was up to me, I would just live with four white walls and a gray couch, you know. But but I would be watching Amen Thompson play basketball though. So yeah, I obviously he brings a lot to the table. You know, like he's a very versatile player. Really provides everything but shooting. Kind of slides into different roles throughout the year, depending what the team needs. Been looking, you know, not for nothing. He had 11 assists when he got injured. So that some of that point guard stuff is starting to come to fruition to an extent, or at least secondary playmaker. You know, like there's a role where him getting assists matters available to him.
Yeah,
Fred's back now, so he probably would have slid back into that dunker spot thing. But Barry's back as well, so he probably would have got back to a little more event creation on defense as opposed to this sort of weak side helping thing he's been doing in Barry's absence. So it stinks. Yeah, I especially was looking forward to seeing him get back to playing next to Barry, actually, because I really think that allows him to unlock his defensive potential and do what he does best on that end of the floor, which is like freestyle, basically. But at the same time, at least the injury wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been. The news was pretty good in the end, and players get hurt. It's going to happen. So I really hope he can play. I think it's 5 more games and he qualifies for all defensive. So I hope he can get back to do that.
you know, this is gonna sound a little crazy. With the injuries that have occurred, there's a good chance like not a good chance. There's a real chance he finishes top three for defensive player of the year.
Yeah, but he himself, I think he's got 60 games played, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. He's at 60. So yeah, he'll get back and hit that 65 for sure.
Promise?
Yeah, I promise. I promise you that he'll like I mean, I can't imagine that, apparently he's out of a boot. He's
Yeah.
walking around like it seems, being young is definitely helpful when you have minor little injuries, even major injuries. But since he's entered the starting lineup full time, which roughly the beginning of January due to injuries, 16.4 points per game, 5.3 assists, 9.8 boards, 55% shooting from the field. We're not going to bring up the 3-point percentage because he doesn't take many and it's not very good. 69% for the free throw line, that's the shooting is always going to be the issue. Only 2.4 turnovers, but 1.6 steals, 1.4 blocks. That's, he's been, as you said, like he kind of does it all. He's like a fantasy. I'm not going to say like a fantasy basketball god, but like he is one of those guys in fantasy that you love to have because it's really hard to find, blocks, steals, assists, rebounds, and points all in the same player. Usually,
for my fantasy lovers out there, if you're doing a 9-cat league and you really want to punt 3-point shooting, I think he'd be an excellent choice. Obviously, he hurts you a little in free throws, but I think he would give you so much in every other category that it would make up for it.
Yeah, because he's gonna be elite in the steals and blocks department, especially for a
Helpful
non.
in points, rebounds, and dimes.
Yeah. So he's been great. Honestly, now now that Bari is back, we were kind of saying earlier, not in the episode, but in previous podcasts, as long as the Rockets have like enough of these guys, they can go without one. It's when you're down like two of Amen, Tari, and Jabari. That's when like I think things start to get a little bit more difficult. But Jabari, he's back. He hasn't played particularly well. He's had some good games, some bad games, kind of normal Jabari Smith Jr. shit. It sucks when a guy breaks his hand. It's like, damn, like why isn't he shooting as well? It's like, well, I guess he wasn't shooting for a few months. Um,
Yeah,
but Tari Eason's been playing, I think,
very well.
very well. His 3-point shot I mean, it's not good, but like, and teams are going to give it to him. But he's one of the guys that they give him the shot, and he will hit it enough times that you're like, okay, we're getting enough points out of this that it's okay. It's kind of fucking up our spacing a little bit. And I had this in my notes from watching him. I think his passing, like he's not a good passer. I don't want anyone to think I'm saying, Tari Eason could lead the league in assists. Tari Eason's like a great playmaker. He's not. He's a little reckless. He's a little wild. But I think his passing has gotten significantly better. He tries a few too many crazy ones, but he's got such long arms. He's like really good at these just like kind of like flinging like almost like hook shot passes like out of trouble. I think that's improved a bit. And that's all you really need a guy like him to do is like, can you hit your open threes when you get in trouble? Can you like throw it to someone kind of open and go do your shit on defense? So yeah, I think they'll be fine with this stretch of schedule they have up. Now, if something odd happens and it takes longer for him to get back, then it could start becoming dicey because they do really need to crush it over this soft stretch to give him the best chance at playoff seeding.
Absolutely. Another thing I noticed about Tari, aside from everything you pointed out that I agree with, but something that's impressed me a fair bit is that turnaround mid-range jumper, man. Like that's really starting to kind of come along.
Tari, cut off, spins, scores over time.
It kind of gives him a means to create in the half court, which I don't feel that he had before. I'll say this too. Oh, hold on. Yeah, okay. So rookie year, shot 32% between 3 and 10 feet. Sophomore year, 37% between 3 and 10 feet. This year, 42%. 10 to 16 feet, it goes 21%, 46%, 42%. So a slight dip, but like nothing.
I mean, he barely played. I'm sure he took like under.
Yeah, exactly.
He probably took like under 20 mid-range jumpers last season.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think the Tari Eason midi is ever going to be like this defines the Rockets offense, but it's a little bit of like a break in case of emergency that he has in the bag now to create something for himself in the half court when everything else is taken away. And I think there have been a lot of questions during his career so far about like, what does this guy do in half court at all? And he's answering those questions. He hits wide open threes. He can dribble into a mid-range and the passing, although stronger in transition, is coming around.
Yeah, and also he has always been a good offensive rebounder. The one area that I don't think the Rockets can, not get the exact same level of production, but get some facsimile of it that Amen provides that I think they will miss is he's the only guy on the team that can really turn rebounds into transition opportunities, and he's really good at it. And while there's like those plays just don't happen that frequently in games, right? I would say if you're lucky, I mean, if you're playing like a really bad transition defense, maybe you get like, 4 or 5 of those. But he can get you two in a game against a real defense,
Yeah.
3 on his own against a less good defense. That doesn't seem like much, but when you have the Rockets half court offense and
Yeah.
compared to like Amen Thompson, like just bombing it down the court and giving you a transition opportunity pretty much out of nowhere. I mean, those 2 extra possessions add up to like a full point almost. And, like a point, getting an extra point from a player just having this one skill is super valuable.
Yeah.
Because, he's adding other things as well. So like, that's like but once again, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. Like they might lose one of these games. I'm not saying they're going to run the table here, but they're going to win enough of these games, I think, even without him, that in reality, this injury just is kind of like, you get
It's
to
not
rest.
that consequential. So long as there's no long-term effects. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not
Now
really
it could have been consequential. Like I'm not saying that if he'd been out for like a month
for the playoffs,
Yeah. I mean, that would have been a serious ankle injury.
Certainly consequential. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Jonathan Kuminga, he missed like 30 something games with a serious ankle sprain. Like you can miss a lot of time with an ankle sprain. And when you watch the video, it didn't look that bad. The way he landed, it wasn't some of the ones that are really bad are when they like come down with like their full weight and like he was kind of leaning back almost on it.
Yeah.
It was so there.
I think that like
good.
non-contact injuries just scare people, understandably. But if you have an eye for it, which I more or less don't, but I instinctually also felt that it didn't look that serious, and like they're all not equal, basically.
Yeah, I have a great eye for injury diagnosis.
I can accept that. I believe that.
Yeah, I mean it's because I've you get enough injuries, you watch enough sports, you read up and try to like learn about like sports science and sports medicine just for yourself and just out of curiosity. You start kind of like figuring out when something is bad, and the best way to tell if something is bad is, did it look bad, and did the dude's reaction right out the bat look bad? I mean, it's like so much of it is just how did the guy respond? That will usually tell you a good deal. Okay, I'm glad that Amen Thompson is generally fine. I wish he wasn't hurt because he's been. I mean, I think some people say he's the Rockets' best player. It's look, look. I'm just gonna say this. I don't believe someone is a team's best player if they're like functionally a role player on offense, unless they're like Rudy Gobert and they're just basically making it so like he's a great defensive player, but he on his own, you can't just do what the Jazz did with like, hey, like we can just like load up on Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal and like it's like guys are like maybe okay defenders and like still be a top 10 defense. Like it's just too hard from the perimeter.
I don't want to go too far down on this because we're both going to root for our guys. Let's be honest here, But I mean, 16 points and 5.5 dimes per is like not role player territory. Like as a starter, he's not been a role player. He's been, he's the best defender on the team.
I know, but like the way he gets those 16 points is like not all of them. It's not like he's just a harvester, but like 10 of those 16 points are coming from other people doing things and him, collecting the checks.
I mean, was Andrei Karolinko a role player? Like maybe like in a certain
dude, go look at let's time out. Go look at Andrei Kar. Let's go no. Go look at prime Andrei Karolinko's stats and tell me someone generating that many free throws.
I know he's not Andrei Karolinko.
Karolinko was sick. Karolinko's like maybe the most underrated player of his era.
Yeah, he's up there. I agree with you.
I mean, dude, like he was doing crazy stuff in terms of generating free throws. And also it was like, Karolinko, yeah, maybe he was a role player. He also like led the fucking league in block shots per game. So
he's incredible. Here's what I'm saying. From a certain semantic sense, you could say that every player is a role player and that they have a role. But I think once that is a very semantic sense. I think once you meet a certain threshold of production, it's just a little misleading to call the guy a role player. Alperen used to get 20 and 10 a game. It was pretty much all on like putbacks and offensive rebounds and stuff, but you couldn't call him a role player. You know what I mean? Even if all you do is finish pick and roll If you're getting 20 and 10, and I say, oh yeah, the guy's a role player, you're gonna go look at his numbers and be like,
Okay.
no, he's not.
So this generally is my definition for a role player. You're certainly a role player if your usage is under 20%. Over that span, averaging 16 points, his usage 17.6%. I'm just saying, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's super good. He's like one of the Rockets' most valuable players, but also like on offense, he is not a guy who, if they don't have him out there with the ball, they're like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do? Like that, like
no, for sure. And so that's one definition
like
of best player,
offense,
and it's a feasible one.
The offense isn't like they're not gonna have to like refigure out what the offensive roles are gonna be, right? I mean, I think
undoubtedly,
that's generally how I view
but
role player.
Since he's in games that Amen Thompson has started this year, who do I think has been the most important player in terms of winning and losing games? Both sides of the floor considered. For me, it is Amen Thompson, but it's narrow,
I'm not saying he's not super important. I'm just saying that it's a lot easier to recreate, maybe not the same level, but recreate the things Amen Thompson does than it is for, I don't know, like Fred VanVleet. Like, it's just harder for them to recreate that because
I disagree.
What are you talking about? Okay, go
defense, man.
Okay, I'm talking about on offense, right? Because
on offense, but you can't just cut out the most important part of his game and be like, oh, well, he's not that important.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just saying offense is way more important from a role standpoint than your defense.
How do you mean from a role standpoint?
Right, so this is the way I view it, right? And this is why role player I generally view from the offensive side. You don't have a real ability to increase a player's defensive usage. If you're a good defender, teams try to limit your defensive usage. On offense, you actually can be like, our guy's good at offense. We can give him more usage. We can give him the ball more. Like, we can get more and more and more out of it. Or, maybe they're not so good, but like we scale their usage down. Like, that's kind of why I generally view it from that way, where it's like the team has some much more control over how you're used on offense than they do on defense, because the fucking, Gobert is an example. Like, we're going to play drop coverage. Why? Because Gobert is really good at drop coverage. Oh, you know what? Like, teams are like figuring out how to deal with that. They're taking his defensive usage away. Gobert, you're gonna need to switch every once in a while and play in isolation. And he ended up becoming pretty good at that, regardless of what people say. If you go look at all the numbers, they're pretty good. It doesn't look good because he's like 7 feet tall and like goofy as shit, but it was effective enough, right? So like that's kind of what I'm saying, where it's like it's much easier for you to do that. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, he's a role player on offense, which means he's like generally like just a role player overall. And he's great on defense and he's super versatile. And if you want to boost his role, quote unquote, because he does have a primary defensive role and they do try to increase his defensive usage when they can, I'm fine with that. I just think, if you were to go the entire season without Fred VanVleet or the entire season without Amen Thompson, I think the Rockets win more games in the season without Amen Thompson than without Fred VanVleet. Like that would just be like my feel.
No, I'm not sure, but that's fair. But let me attack you from one more angle, okay? And then we should move on to
I feel like Gobert in a drop coverage. Like, well, let's try this. Let's try this next one.
Well, if you're Gobert in a drop coverage, you should be fine. But
unless Luka's out there bombing threes or something, or point. Nicholas Batum's in the corner cooking my ass.
Right? Yeah. No, that can be a problem for him too. So, your basic premise is that a role player can't be your best player. Would you agree that that's your basic premise?
Like sort of, like basically, generally speaking. Like when I say, like, here's the thing. I understand what like the numbers say. It's like sometimes there are teams where the role player is the best player because just they're so good in that role that they're better.
I know. Yeah, I get that.
But at the same time, I'm like, that guy isn't their best player unless they're actually like the guy's doing, someone else is doing the best player shit, right? And so
no,
it's
for
like,
real, yeah,
it's a weird discrepancy. And I'm talking about like best player in terms of like what you do, and maybe not best player in terms of like raw outcomes. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, but let me ask you this: if I said that a man was the second best player, how would you feel about that?
I would like have like no gripes. I don't even know who the Rockets' best player is. I just don't think Amen Thompson is it. It's but
So you're saying that a role player can't be the best player, but can be the second best player. That feels just a little spurious logically to me. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
because the best player is like it's like it's like physics here, right? Like the best player is the thing that everything orbits around, and like it is the
Not
most important
always.
thing because it's got the biggest gravitational pull of like what's going on here. And I just don't think Amen is the central component to what the Rockets are doing on offense.
That's a helio-pilled
That's
take
not. I'm
there.
not saying it's not
Every team doesn't have
helio.
a Luca, you know, or a
I'm not
Jokic.
saying I'm not. Yeah, but like Luca is like Luca's like a superstar, right? A
Better
super.
than Amen Thompson, yeah.
Yeah,
If
he's like
that's
a
what we're
but
talking
he's like
about
a
now.
super big star, and like whoever's the Rockets, orbited, gravitational orbital whatever is like like a red dwarf or something. It's like some like it's not nearly as big, and so there's other
Exactly.
stuff going on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I
But
just
so,
don't think it's that controversial to say like Amen's probably not the Rockets' best player.
well, it is kind of controversial because, as you originally pointed out, a lot of people do feel that way now.
Yeah, because look, a lot of people like saying the new thing is the better thing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the coming years. I don't know.
I'm
I
not
think.
saying he can't be their best player long term. I'm just saying like right now, a guy with a 17.6% usage, I'm probably saying like, yeah, if they lose him, it's a little less concerning than the guys with significantly more usage.
Well, surely Jalen has higher usage, and you'd rather lose Jalen than Amen Thompson.
Yeah, but once again, like I actually don't know long term what would be like how like I think the difference in team performance would be like closer than people would want to admit because I don't think Jalen Green's great, but like he is doing something no one else on the team can do that you kind of do need.
Well, it would be interesting to see if I'll say this. It'd be interesting to see if team record correlates more closely with usage or with BPM. You know, like that would be one way to try to look at that. It's an interesting question.
Sure,
Like,
sure. Well, yeah, but I
yeah,
was like, but we're getting into the weeds on this. I'm just saying,
yeah.
like, Amen Thompson, great player, but he's not the most. It's not the worst player I think for the Rockets to lose. You disagree potentially, and they're not losing for that long, and they're playing a bunch of podunk fucking
And nobody gets to find out who's right. Yeah.
yeah. But so it doesn't really matter. Final injury news. We saved this till the end. Reed Shepard is out for a month or so with a thumb injury. It sounds like for his right hand. Has not been a great rookie season for him, except he got one start, and in that one start, he cooked the Oklahoma City Thunder with the number one defense in the NBA. So, and they had their full complement of guys. So it wasn't just randomly he played like the Oklahoma Thunder B team, cooked it. So, I don't know. It's like, is all of the other games where he's coming off the bench sporadically with, not playing well more important than the one time they said, here's the rock son. And he said, let me cook the best defense in the league. I don't know. I don't know.
I actually probably think that that one game says more about his offensive capabilities than the whole season because he barely got on the floor. Scared to shoot half the time. Right when he finally does, like it's been a bad year to evaluate him. It's not very
Yeah.
fair, to be honest. And so I do think a full game against the Thunder is a fairer evaluation. Like that isn't, even though it's counterintuitive to like the scientific mind because you're like, well, one game isn't as big of a sample, but I think that the conditions of the experiment are better.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think his shooting percentage all year means like anything. I completely throw it out the window. But watching him, I do think there are concerns about like how substantial of a defensive liability is he going to be. I think that is something to think about. And it may be that the Rockets or another team down the road have to decide between like, is he so impactful offensively, which he could still be, that it's worth mitigating that by putting the defense around him, much like Trae Young.
Yeah. Also, I think he'll be better on defense than Trae Young for the simplest reason of he fucking tries.
Wants to be. Yeah, he'll get steals and even blocks at least. So yeah.
He will try to do something, unlike Trae Young, who's like out there cosplaying a traffic cone. I mean, that's insulting traffic cones. Traffic cones have stopped people, cars, and traffic cones stop all sorts of things. Matter of
They
fact,
do.
I you
Yeah.
know I think we should stop saying defenders look like a traffic cone. It's kind of unfair to
Not
traffic
Trey Young
cones.
anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Reed Shepard. I hope he gets healthy. I hope we next season we just get a better, as you said, environment to evaluate him. He hasn't like earned more minutes, but I think it can be tough, especially for it's especially for a guy who's never probably had to come off the bench and in the way that he has. I think that can be tough to adapt to, and I think his disposition and basketball brain doesn't work so well in the conditions he's in because when he started that one game and then when he played in summer league, like he came out with like, like my job is to create offense, to get shots, like get like kind of like that mindset. And when he's coming off the bench, it's like it feels like his mindset is like I'm here to like help the team and set up my teammates. Like I don't boom, like I want to defer. And I'm like what the fuck are you
Lateral
doing?
chest pass.
Yeah.
Woo!
Bounce pass. Bounce
Yeah.
pass. Like
Swing
it's
it.
yeah, it's like watching like a video of like the basketball fundamentals. It's like, elbow up, beef.
Frankly, he looks like me out there with my D5 team. That's kind of a lot of times guys like you can shoot, I'm like, oh yeah, right, okay, thanks. Like,
Yeah, thanks. I
yeah.
forgot. But yeah, so get well, and I saw that he was working with his left hand on the dribble. So like maybe he comes back and like his left hand is like, have you ever seen Cinderella Man? It's a film about a boxer. It's like stars Russell Crowe. It's based off a true story, but this guy like makes a comeback and it's during the Great Depression and like he breaks his hand, and so I think he breaks his right hand, his strong hand, so he has to like practice more with his left hand, and he gets way better at punching with his left hand. It's one of the reasons
That's a
why
cool
he's able
story.
to. Yeah, yeah. It's actually a good movie. So if anyone likes boxing movies, in an era of predominantly white boxers. Um, if you like watching those types of movies, it's a good one. Directed by Ron Howard. Paul Giamatti plays his trainer. I think what's her name? The Bridget Jones lass. What's her name? Oh fuck it, I forget. We're not.
I like boxing movies. I love the Rocky series. They're very sentimental for me.
Yeah, so this is like much better than the Rocky films in terms of like an actual film.
Renee Zellweger. Have you seen the
Yes.
first Rocky? The first Rocky is like it won Best Picture. It's legitimately a classic. Then
I know
then
the
they turned it into a franchise.
Yes, look, I've seen the first Rocky. I'm a real person. I
Yeah, you're a man of
exist.
culture. Okay.
The first Rocky's like good, but it's
Really
also
good.
it's one of those movies where it hasn't aged as well because there's just a million other movies that were like, let's just take the Rocky formula, and so you're like, I've seen this movie a million times.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
And
Yeah.
it's very cheesy. It's the thing, and like this
I
movie
don't think
has
the
some of
first one
that.
is particularly cheesy. I think it's gritty. I think it's got really good atmosphere. I love that movie.
It's good. It's clearly the best one.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Let's just like
no further arguments on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the Amen Thompson of the series, if you will.
No, the Amen Thompson series is Rocky 4.
Actually, I really like Rocky 4, so that's okay. Anyway,
Like I said, it ended the Cold War. Like why the Soviet Union collapse?
if you can change, and I can change, everybody can change. All right,
exactly. Yeah. I must break this bit up and let's go talk about the double bigs. Double bigs. So Rockets fans almost certainly have noticed that Ime Udoka has decided in the year 2025 to play Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun together. This reminds me very much of when they had Christian Wood, and they're like, fans were like, Christian Wood's a power forward. I'm like, Christian Wood is not a power forward. They're like, well, he's not a center. I'm like, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, so they're doing that, and I have some numbers before you get into it. It's been 56 minutes. So we're in what we like to call small sample size territory. But the numbers are pretty impressive. I'm using NBA.com's numbers, not PBB stats, like I normally would, just because it's easier for me to get some of the like rebounding numbers, because those with a double big lineup I figured would be important, and they have proven to be. So they have 121.3 offensive rating with those two, a 74.4 defensive rating with those two, which is amazingly good for a plus 47 net rating. That's probably not going to continue, but so far so good in 56 minutes. It's been worth it. If like I don't care if it's not going to last forever. If you can do anything on an NBA court that good for 56 minutes, it was worth doing. It was worth getting lucky, right? A 1.89 assist to turnover ratio. These are the fun rebounding stats. A 52.4% offensive rebound percentage. That's
Wow.
wild. Yeah, that's crazy. This is also nuts. An 85.9% defensive rebound percentage. Both of those would be like by far and away number one over the full season, which is why it's small sample size. 55.9% effective field goal percentage. Doesn't really matter when you collect over half your misses. And then a 0.33 free throw attempt rate, which means for every 3 shots they get up, they generate 1 free throw, which considering how many offensive rebounds they're getting means there's kind of like a higher number of possessions that are ending in a free throw attempt or a strip to the free throw line. So yeah, those are the numbers. I didn't mention the 3-point shooting. Opponents are not hitting 3-pointers. They're also not hitting 2-pointers, which you would suspect might be a thing that they could do. But the opponent's shooting numbers are like insanely good, and they won't continue. And the Rockets are also hitting 39% of their threes with those guys out there. But yeah, like James, did Ime Udoka break basketball with a double big lineup?
I don't want to look. One thing I think is interesting, right? One thing I think is interesting is it's not just double big either. We're starting to see Barry at the 3. We're even seeing a little bit of Tari at the 2, which is wild stuff. Wild stuff. So the Rockets are going real big, and I would like to see them keep playing with it, right? Like, of course, it's a small sample. Of course, it's not going to be this effective to where it's the best lineup in basketball history, like the Rockets didn't just build the best team in NBA history by pairing Steven Adams with Alperen Sengun. But to your point, to have done this for 56 minutes and for it to be this effective, like it's not nothing, I would also add this. Barry's been shooting really well, which is probably buoying the overall team shooting during that sample. But like, is it possible that he's shooting better partly because his primary assignment has typically been shorter and has a harder time contesting him? I don't want to rule it out, like, and then I said this on Twitter and people said, oh, come on, man. It's just because he's, hardly shot any shots yet. Like it's going to regress. I'm like, probably, maybe, but there is a normative theory behind the empirical numbers, which is when his assignment is smaller, he shoots better. I think it's possible. I think there's no harm in finding out if it continues, like if he starts at the 3 next year and he shoots 39% throughout the year, I'm going to say, yeah, it turns out that's what happened. You can't know unless you look into it. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. Is the future of the Rockets Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, and a big? I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to say no.
It would be, I mean, it would be funny as shit.
Holiday to Adams. Into Smith. Your guy Jose Alvarado was sitting on the ground. Really, Alvarado's dealing with some hit soreness. Questionable foot obviously out there. Abs double big, ignited. Oh, that probably should have been stolen. Smith over Zion for 3. Now back down to 10. Adams to Holiday. Back to Adams. And that one rolls off as he was trying to finish on. Extension! And a big monster dunk. Wow, that was one of his better, more powerful finishes we've seen from him in his career. Holiday, short, Sengun battling, got it scored.
I'll say this: a double big lineup with Adams and Sengun is not going to be that. The 3-point shooting will come back to league average, and they're kind of doing the thing that's a lot of teams do at some point for a stretch and it looks genius, where there's like, what if we just let the other team miss 3-pointers?
Yeah.
And so it's like
And then we're gonna get the rebound every time. So
we're getting the rebound every time. It's gonna be really hard to score twos. Like like it's gonna look amazing. And then what ends up happening is when you let teams miss 3-pointers, you're also gonna eventually let them make 3-pointers.
Yeah.
And we'll see what type of push and pull that has. It kind of reminds me of how the Lakers defense has been was super good for a stretch without AD. And you go look at the numbers. It was basically, they just to let teams take more threes, and they just were hitting way fewer of them also at the same time. And you can go, the 2-point percentage got better. It's like, yeah, well, you're packing the paint. Like that's the trade-off you're making. But then the problem ends up becoming, like I say this all the time, like hitting your threes makes your offense look so much better, because inevitably what happens is you hit a few threes and that compactness, it gets a little bit less compact. Even if that's what you're supposed to do, you're kind of like, this guy keeps hitting the shot, I kind of need to like fucking contest it. And that solidity starts to disintegrate. So we'll see how the defensive side works. But if you can collect that many rebounds on both sides, you can't play this lineup big minutes, in my opinion. I think you don't want to. But as so many teams have they throw the small ball lineup kind of as like a change of pace for teams. I think the Rockets saying, hey, like, what if instead of like having a small ball lineup, we go to a big ball lineup, some big old swinging balls lineup, and they're just that's our little change up. I agree. They need to keep doing it.
Yeah, I like that.
Like if someone's working this well, you just keep doing it, and you're like, well, like here's the thing: no opposing team has proven that this lineup isn't effective in some capacity, right? Like they're not. It's not going to be a plus 47 net rating forever. But even if this lineup is like a +3 net rating, it's not like the worst thing to have like in your back pocket where you're like, hey, you know what? Like maybe a double big lineup would work here. And I guarantee that if they feel like this is real, they'll deploy it when they think it's going to be the most advantageous, right? They're not going to be like running it out there where if like they're playing the Golden State Warriors and it's, Draymond, Jimmy, Steph, and like, they're going super small and they're just out there and they're just like running and gunning and they're like, oh, let's just go put the two bigs. Like maybe that's like the perfect, like, what if the opposite of what they're doing works? But if they try it out and it's clear it's not fast enough, they'll just be like, okay, not the time to do this.
Let me in a broad stroke way, I think the lesson of the past like decade of the NBA, besides 3 is greater than 2, is that versatility is king. Like originally, small ball starts to trend, right? Guys in that 6'6" to 6'9" range start playing the 5, and we go, "Wow, this is crazy," but it works, right?
Centers are dead.
Centers are dead, and then next thing you know, like every year, the 2 of the 4 leading MVP candidates are centers. Like it just kind of comes back, and we realize, okay, size is always going to be beneficial in the game of basketball. Like there's no way around that, right? I always think of it this way: if they ban centers completely, nobody over 6'8" is allowed in the league. And then they said, okay, we'll allow Yusuf Nurkic back into the league. He would be an MVP candidate, right? Because he would average 25 and 15 just on virtue of bullying everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's
like you're not wrong. And it's also just like funny to think like Yusuf Nurkic got salary dumped by the Suns, who like suck and desperately could use a real center.
Because other people are allowed to be big. That's his problem, right? Is that there are other big people and they're good at basketball.
Man, speaking of Yusuf Nurkic and the Suns, I can't believe you even bring up Steven Adams and Plumlee got in a kerfuffle.
Yeah, they got into a spat there. Yeah, they have a bit of a history, hey?
Got lights out from 3 of them. Just turned around, knocked it down. Now Plumlee Adams. He walked over one of the best. The last guy you want, he takes it down.
I mean, I guess so.
There have been a few incidents, yeah. Anyway,
I'm upset they ejected both of them. They should have
Adams,
let they should have let them keep playing both and see what happens next. That's my theory.
let me wrap my thoughts up with this.
Yeah.
The difficulty, I think, in terms of thinking about it as a potential like long-term like primary look, which like again, I doubt it, but well, okay, not with Adams. Not with Adams.
Oh,
I mean, in
okay.
terms of like, do you start thinking about like, should we consider drafting a big and seeing if he works with Sengun at the 4, right? Like stuff like that. Like, I think it's tricky because whoever they get is not going to be Adams, right? Because they don't make a whole lot of Adamses anymore, and the rebounding advantage has been pretty instrumental to the overall like net rating advantage. So like, I really like Kaman Maluak. If our pick jumped, I would be thinking about him, but I don't know that it would function the same way. I think it would function similarly. Slaughter and I were talking about this last night. We had a long talk about this. Insofar as like, part of what's happening here is that with Adams on the floor, teams are sometimes choosing to have their 4 guard Sengun, and Sengun is going to cook any 4 in the league anytime, right? Would the same effect happen if you had more of like a Slenderman big who is more about rim protection? Well, but I mean,
I would just so I would say this, maybe the first possession, but if like the thing with Adams that makes him, I think you should point out, like unique, is that you gotta put a big body on him, and even that might not be enough. If you have one of these, like it's like Karl Anthony Towns, even teams just like, yeah, fuck it, we'll put a wing on him. Right?
Yeah, but can you do the same thing with Chet Holmgren, say? Because I think he like with
that's what
reach, he's just gonna dunk and get easy looks over shorter defenders.
Sure, that can happen, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah,
it's like you would make that calculus 10 times out of 10. If like, here's the thing, if the idea is, well, Sengun is cooking their 4, and the question is, do we keep our center on this guy who's not really doing that much in the paint, or not like going to kill us in the paint in the same way, where we put the center on him? And yeah, I mean, I do think, like, I think Sengun is a center. I think the double big lineup, once again, like, it's working in short spurts as a way to just present teams with a problem that they're not exactly sure how to solve. And because, like, as you said, like, Sengun's and Adams is like the most unique front court pairing we will see from a skill set. It's the best rebounder in the league with one of the best rebounders in the league, who also happens to be like a very effective post one-on-one scorer. And Adams, and this is the other thing, Adams he's not a good passer, but he's a solid passer. He sets great screens. And so now, like, you can do all sorts of kind of like weird things. And like, I like it from that standpoint. But once again, it's like, if you gave, like, I just don't think long term the answer is like put another center next to Sengun. Maybe it's put a power forward who can kind of fake it at center, like a Jaren Jackson.
Like, Barry, I guess.
But like, but Jackson is like he's much more centerish in terms
of
like,
okay, yeah. But so what if Malua can effectively be that? Because he's not 200-pound Chad Holmgren. He's somewhere in between those two.
I don't see any reason, like, once again, I don't see any reason why the Rockets wouldn't take a center, because, are they going to bring back Adams? Right? Like, they're going to need a replacement long term as a backup center. And like, once again, like, I'm all for having this in your back pocket and maybe using it every game for 5 or 6 minutes, right? It's like the small ball thing. Like, very few teams actually run small ball all the time. They have it and they can use it because they say, we need the advantages it provides right now, and we think those advantages will make up for the disadvantages. And I think this is a similar thing. It's just, it's a thing to have that teams aren't ready for, because like the Warriors, when they had their death lineup, that wasn't even their starting lineup. And they were very judicious about using it, and their fans would bitch and moan about, oh, like, why aren't we like playing this more? And it's like, because it's so good, because we don't play it more,
Yeah, that's right.
you know?
I want to check one thing, and I got to go eat lunch pretty soon, if you don't mind, if the listeners don't mind, but I do want to check this 1 second. I'm thinking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? And a lot of people said those lineups wouldn't work. And now, no, hold on, hear me out.
Those
And
guys
now,
are a bit different.
well, because Evan Mobley can shoot now, right? He's up to 36.5% on 2.9 threes per game. It's not fantastic, but it's he's a spacer now. It's competence, right? And so I would say that some of this conversation is almost misguided in that we don't even know how guys are going to develop. Like I don't want to rule out Alperen Sengun as a 3-point shooter, man. Like he's got touch. He's a really skilled kid. Like maybe he'll hit 36% on 3 attempts per game someday. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think. Look, I'm not saying rule it out, but I'm also saying building around thinking that's going to happen.
No doubt.
Would be
but
a bit of a like. I'd be like, let's like, it'd be cool. But
I agree.
Should we presume that's going to happen? It would
But to that effect, though, as you said, you take a big for multiple reasons because, like, you need a backup. If he ends up being too good to be a backup, you could trade him. You might, like, you don't know what you're going to find out, so you just take him if you think he's the best prospect on the board. I get that. Yeah.
Also, like, I will say this, like, one of the big differences between one of the things about the Cleveland situation is like Mobley is super mobile. Jared Allen, for a guy who is just a center, is also quite mobile.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they've been so good this year is like, those guys have been good together, but they also play them not together a lot where one of them is just the center on their own. Right. And so yes, they play it more than what I'm suggesting that you should do with the Adams and Sengun lineup. And I think that there's obvious reasons for that. Like that's not the most mobile front court in the league. It might be the least mobile front
court. Probably the least mobile front court in the league. Yeah, exactly.
But what were like before this season, because people have short memories. What was everyone saying before this season about Mobley and Allen?
That didn't work.
It didn't work. You got to break them up, and what they did is they didn't do that. They got a little bit better together. Mobley took a step forward on offense as not just a shooter, but attacking mismatches and just getting into the paint and scoring. Allen has really developed into a solid passer. Like Jared Allen's really good. He doesn't get a lot of credit. Could have been a Houston Rocket, by the way. Let's not relitigate that trade. But yeah, those two guys have like a good skill set. But one of the reasons they've also been so good is they're like, what we can do? We can basically have 48 minutes where we have either Darius Garland and or Darius Garland and Jared Allen, or Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell together on the court, which is, most teams would be happy if like that was like their star duo, and they can have a star duo basically on the court for 48 minutes, and then they could have all 4 of them on it for like, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would imagine it's not greater than probably like 12 minutes a game. Right. So I think it is more close to what the Rockets are doing right now than you would think.
I think you're right. Let's send it home, man. I'm starved.
Okay. James, hearing about the double big, thinking about double big cheeseburger, double Big Mac. Big Macs are already kind of doubled up if we're going to be completely honest, tripled up on the buns. That's the appeal. Okay, this was the franchise. As always, remember to like and subscribe. Like, once again, if you get this far, you should like and subscribe. Also, go check us out on YouTube, Franchise Podcast. It will be harder to find than it should be because, well, algorithms, and you're not subscribing and sharing it with your friends and family and forcing them to subscribe like a weirdo. But you could do that. You should do that. James, do you want to plug anything?
SpaceCityScoop.com, man. That's all. Go check it out. Articles about the Rockets.
You gotta check it out if you're a Rockets fan. Also, even if you're not a Rockets fan, why not? Right? Like,
well, you got this far into our podcast, so
yeah. Hate listening.
Yeah. Go do some hate reading.
Yeah, do some hate reading. Granted, I'm assuming most people they are going to hate listen. They probably hate me over you. Um, just in my experience of my life, that tends to be the case.
People
Uh,
like me, you know.
what can I say? I like you. You're chill.
I like you too. You know.
Well, that's the thing. You're. I'm not saying you're alone in that, but there are some people who would vehemently disagree.
Eh.
Hey, I'm a divisive person. I'll live with it. Um, you know, I was trying to think of a basketball player who's divisive, but I couldn't think. Brain's not
Dylan
working.
Brooks.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm like Dylan Brooks though. I mean, maybe
All
I
right.
am. It might be true. I just, sometimes you don't want to like hold the mirror up like that. Um, anyways, we'll try to be back in like a week. We always say that, and then we sometimes fail. But anyway, so we'll be back next week. Peace.
Peace.